Welcome back. October was another month of modest employment growth in Canada. Just 14,500 jobs were added during the month. Let's talk about it with an expert. Travis O'Rourke is president of Hays Canada. And as you can see, he's on the set with me now. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
What did you think? I mean, we spoke to other experts earlier in the morning. They thought this is emblematic of a slowing Canadian economy and a moderating Canadian labor market.
I think that's right. We're referring to it at Hays as the great stagnation. It's kind of flat right now. There's nothing really exciting happening. We saw public sector jobs go down a little bit, private sector go up a little bit, construction moved a tiny bit, but there's not a lot happening right now. The market's a bit stuck.
There was a big uptick in full-time employment. That number of 14.5 is the result of an addition of some 27,000 full-time jobs, I believe, and then the subtraction, 25,000 full-time jobs approximately, and the subtraction of roughly 11,000 part-time jobs. Is that additional full-time, is that a positive in these numbers?
We love to see that. It shows a little bit of confidence, certainly in the economy. Again, a lot of it is going to be off the back of interest rates. We can tie most of it to building services or construction. But any kind of role that drives GDP for us, we're happy to see that's where the increase is coming from.
And you said earlier today in some notes that you shared with us that mass layoffs have subsided. Talk to us about that and what that may mean to the labor market.
That's right. Well, we're in a spot right now where mass layoffs have kind of gone away. There's still trickles that happen, mostly on a company performance basis. But that broad stream cutting of costs is kind of gone. Now, what you'd like to see then at some point is the surge in hiring coming through. But whether it's job postings or actual hiring numbers, they're just not moving the way we'd like to see it.
What's going on with wages? Why do wages continue to rise at about 5%? The most recent number is about 5%, 4.9% on an annual basis.
I think they're on an annual basis, but that data is going to go away pretty soon here. We do a salary survey every year. We did 6,000 Canadians about a month ago, and we're forecasting that 40% of people are not going to get any raise at all in calendar year 2025. Last year, 13% actually got that, and the wages that are getting increased in 2025 are only going to be around that 3% range. So although the wages are outpacing inflation, we're not going to catch up to those big hits that we took at the grocery store over the last year.
In this morning's conversation with an economist at Bank of Montreal and a portfolio manager, those two people spoke, had things to say about productivity in Canada and the weak productivity performance we've had for some time now in this country. The BMO economist says this is a problem that stretches back as long as 20 years. What would we see? What would you like to see in the employment market if we were to turn that trend around?
Yeah, I think we need to see some capital investment coming in that's not just inside of real estate. Like the housing prices have gone up so aggressively over the last couple of years that a lot of capital is going into a space that does not help the Canadian productivity problem. So we'd like to see tech innovation. We'd like to see AI in particular. And that's the way that we're going to be able to grow as an economy. I think with the Trump presidency coming in, there's a high likelihood that Canada becomes a greater location for technology workers, specifically from an immigration standpoint. But also we
saw that a bit. We saw that to some degree, or maybe a significant degree, during the first Trump presidency. Correct?
That's right. Yeah, we've seen this movie before. A lot of those big tech names that you're comfortable or familiar with, they weren't able to get people into the U.S. So we saw big pops happen in Vancouver and in Toronto, and I expect that's going to happen again. The second part I expect out of this is we suffer in Canada from the Canadian brain drain, which is a lot of our high-tech graduates from Waterloo or University of Toronto end up going down to the U.S. where you get these massive increases in salary, not just from a dollar standpoint, but on a like-for-like currency basis. And if the borders get tightened up, I think Canada's in a great spot.
What about Trump's tariffs? Could that affect the employment at companies that ship their goods to the U.S.?
Like the only certainty is uncertainty, right? I think right now, why we refer to it as the great stagnation is until we see what this administration's actually going to do, what policies come through, it's difficult to invest in manufacturing. It's difficult to predict what's going to happen in forestry or in energy as a whole. So we're kind of in this spot right now to see when he's going to make a move.
Right. You think executives in those sectors are going to hit pause on expansion or investment plans until they figure out what's going on in Washington?
I do.
Youth employment was up in these most recent numbers. How volatile is youth employment?
Youth employment was very much tied to the explosive surges in immigration that we saw over the last year. Now that's curtailed a little bit. And you get a lot of people who come in from out of the country. Maybe they're really experienced in their home country, but they're just looking for entry-level work in Canada. And that really has competed with our youth class. And so as immigration levels have come down a little bit, youth unemployment's going up, and I think that's a pretty predictable trend going forward.
How significant is the federal government's plan to dial back immigration levels? How significant an impact will it have on the Canadian employment market and perhaps that youth market?
We're going to come right back to the new president in the United States. And if those borders tighten up, how we need to respond with our own immigration is going to be crucial. Like, we need tech workers. We need high skilled, we need highly educated workers in many different sectors. And if they can't get into the US, we need to be a welcoming location. It'll help address that productivity issue, and it'll help address the massive skill shortages that Canada has.
Travis, thanks a great deal for your insight, as always.
My pleasure.
Travis O'Rourke is president of Hayes Canada.